I'm Pip. I have worked in HR for 20 years now. I can't quite believe it's been 20 years, but it has been. And as Sarah said, I'm freelance now. But in my corporate career, I worked for these lovely organisations across public and private sector, retail, utilities, and kind of technology. And obviously those of you that live in Cambridge will know of kind of Domino and Inca, and hopefully will know about Anglian Water. So quite broad ranging experience, different sectors, and I worked right up to head of HR level at Inca before I went freelance. And then since I've been freelance, these are just some of the companies that I've been supporting. And again, a really lovely range, through from charities to manufacturing businesses, occupational health businesses, estate agencies, skin aesthetics clinics, garden companies, a little bit of everything, which has been lovely because every business is at a slightly different stage. So what's been nice for me is to sort of learn that startup thing, but also, you know, how they're expanding and the challenges that they're facing, and supporting them with that has been really lovely. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, I think I mentioned it in the blurb for the webinar, but just so we're all clear, we'll look at some of the kind of recent and current research and thinking around employee wellbeing. We'll talk about what the benefits are of having an employee wellbeing strategy for your business. We'll talk about what exactly is a strategy, because I think sometimes the word strategy is a bit scary and daunting for people if you've not done it before. So we'll just talk about what it is, break that down a bit. There'll be some advice on how to kind of devise it, where to start, where do you actually start to think about it, and then tips and hints on structuring it, and how you put it together. And then some general hints and tips at the end to kind of leave you with. And I have also put some ideas for all sorts of different wellbeing activities that you could do. And that's not to say take the list away and just do all of them, because we'll talk about how to approach it. But there are lots of ideas in there from my corporate experience, my freelance experience, people that I've met on my freelance travels that could come under that wellbeing heading that I've thought, actually, it's a bit different, but they might be a really good supplier. And then there'll be plenty of time for Q&A. So I'm probably aiming to chatter on for about 20-25 minutes, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. And as Sarah said, if you've got questions as we go through, I have said to Sarah, if there's a relevant question, then she can butt in and interrupt me, and we can kind of break and talk about that. I will just apologise that I'm having building work done. So if you see men walking in the background and you hear any rumbling of noise, that's drilling. And I have told them to stop for an hour, but you know, they're having a tea break. So I'm hoping that they're going to keep quiet for me. So current thinking. So I kind of went back into some of my HR publications and just looked at where were we kind of during the pandemic. So this article is from October 2020. And even then you can see that the topic of employee wellbeing moving up the agenda. I think it's been kicking around, certainly in HR circles, it's been kicking around for probably 8-10 years really, but I don't think in terms of talking seriously about it as a strategic part of business thought and planning, I don't think it's been on the agenda as heavily. It's definitely been something people are doing, but I think it has been more of a kind of tick box exercise. Yes, we've got some wellbeing activity happening and that's lovely. But, you know, this article kind of brought it home for me because, you know, it does say the majority of businesses believed that employee needs will be at the heart of future workplace design. Obviously, the quote here is aimed at HR people. I will just say that, you know, where it says the role of HR is to adapt and support individuals' wellbeing, that's not just HR's role. So for those of you that run your own businesses or are managers, I think actually we've all got a part to play. It's just that this was in an HR magazine, so it's obviously tilting it more towards HR people. But the point is, you know, we have all got a role to play in supporting each individual's well-being. So that, you know, we can't just, as I said in the blurb for the webinar, we can't just put in place a fruit basket and a yoga class and say we've done well-being, that's finished. It's about really getting under the skin of, you know, what do people need and what do they want? You know, and also importantly, wherever they may be working from. Flexible working is kind of part of this well-being theme. I did say to Sarah, I could do a webinar on flexible working separately because that is a whole nother topic. I do mention it a bit through this webinar because it comes into people's mental health and, you know, managing their lives better and all of those things. This article really stood out to me, and I've used this quote that I've highlighted in the green box quite a lot on my social media because I think this, for me, is the important point. You know, data shows that employees are placing a greater emphasis on well-being, with employees overwhelmingly believing that their employees have an obligation to care for their financial and mental well-being. So we've gone from a position where it's kind of a nice to do, a nice to have, to actually employees saying, we think our employer has an obligation to do this. And I think that's an important change of language. This obligation has shifted. So I think if you're an employer and you employ people, it's absolutely something that you need to be alive to and be aware that current employees and new employees are probably going to be expecting you to have something in place in terms of well-being. Just a couple of quotes here from other publications, and really these are showing more about the sort of commercial benefits for you as an organization. So employee well-being, morally it's the right thing to do, it's a nice thing to do for your people to show we care, but there are actually some commercial benefits. So the top one there, you can encourage retention and reduce churn, so turnover of people, when we demonstrate genuine care for people. And that bottom quote, it's not just a nice to have, it is an excellent predictor of productivity. So there's some commercial benefits that you can get from having an employee wellbeing strategy in place that are measurable and tangible. And you could test those if you wanted, pre having something in place and a few months afterwards, because I'd be interested to see that. This survey, so number one, I like this, it's visual, lots of nice statistics. This was actually in 2019, so just pre-pandemic, but I thought it was interesting to put it up because some of the stats in here are quite interesting. I'm assuming a lot of these will have either gone up or down, depending on what they are. But, we've that second stat, half of employees would take a 20% pay cut to move to a 4-day working week. That for me was quite shocking. 4-day working week's been talked about for years as something that we're aspiring to from an HR perspective, to embed in businesses. But it's very much been not everybody kind of understands the value. So I would think a lot more people, whether they still take the pay cut, but I think a lot more people would still want that 4-day working week now, or at least, compressed working weeks. That's something that I've discussed a lot in organisations is, could people do longer days over less days to end up with a compressed week and a day off? And again, corporate businesses sometimes can't quite get their heads around how that will work. But I think the pandemic has almost prompted these discussions about, we're going to be in a changing world now. We're going to need to think about how that could work for us as a business, but also how that can work for people and their well-being and their mental health. Obviously, the stat below, just emphasising that, a quarter of people felt that flexibility would empower staff to manage their mental health better, which I think there is a clear link between those things. But nearly half, so 42%, are saying that they don't believe their employer supports or cares about their mental health. I'd be interested to see what that figure is now, because I think the pandemic forced employers to make sure their people were okay because they couldn't see them. So I kind of feel like that stat might have changed a bit, and I think hopefully would have gone up, because I know most of the clients that I've been supporting and the employers that I've been supporting have definitely been worried and concerned about their people and have wanted to do things for their people. And then, just that top one, just a few stats there about what people and the level to which people value these things, mental health days, flexible working, employee assistance programs, things like that. They're all good things to have in place, essentially, is what that's saying. And 10% of employers, only 10% don't offer any form. So I think a lot of employers are alive to it and are doing something. My experience when I was in corporate was very much well-being was kind of something you did. You probably made real use of like well-being weeks. I think there's a well-being week around May and June. There used to be one in October as well. And in well-being week, you'd really go for it and you'd do a week of activity. And then almost after that, kind of nothing would happen the rest of the year, or very little would happen the rest of the year. So I think we're now moving into a world where actually it's going to be this rolling program of activity. And then in Wellbeing Week, you will still go to town, but you'll almost emphasize some of the stuff that you're already doing. And you might get some of those suppliers in to do a bit more for you on those topics. And then this study, which is super recent, so literally this month, this popped up last week in my feed, and I was like, oh, how useful, because I'm doing a webinar all about this. So these two organisations, so you see big companies here, Sharp and Channel 4, are really starting to understand, you know, the value of doing this stuff, and they're actually going out there and saying, here's what we're doing, here's our approach. So we've got this whole thing about remote working here on the left. You know, 77% of employees felt they're more productive. A bit like earlier, it talked about these commercial benefits. So higher productivity when we can work remotely and flexibly. 12% of people want more autonomy. Empowered employees are much more willing, I think we already know this, but they're much more willing to put extra effort in. You know, I know back when I worked for Anglian Water and I worked remotely, I was field-based, I would do extra hours because I had that flexibility in my life. I would, you know, if I needed to hop on at night and quickly get something done, I would, because I knew I had that flexibility. And then that important one about the company wellness there. So 82% of company wellness initiatives end in sickness absence being dramatically reduced. So again, it's just emphasizing these, it's great things to do because it meets what employees want, but actually there are some real commercial and tangible benefits that you can pull out if you get it right. And I think what we're also seeing is big companies are going out there very publicly and saying, here's our approach. And I just think that eventually will filter down to smaller companies in terms of your recruitment and, you know, your employee proposition and your culture and the way you speak to people about how you do things around here. So I think if you're not doing that and you do some great stuff, shouting about it and saying what you do, I think is a really valuable thing.
Just to interrupt there, Pip, yeah. We've had Heather kind of add on another one of those sorts of things where she's gone to a webinar recently, which reported that Gen Z employees, place well-being above salary and career progression. So yeah. It could also be the generational thing of shifting the importance of things hugely. As well.
Yeah, hugely. And, you know, we know millennials are much more into, they want to be valued, they want to feel like you care. You know, when they come to, I'm going to talk about employer of choice later, but, you know, when they're applying for a job, they're not so worried about what the pension scheme is and do you do private medical. They're lovely benefits to have, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be asking you about that. They're going to be saying, what do you do on employee wellbeing? Can I work flexibly? Can I? And for me, the flexible working thing, there's almost two phases. You know, can I work flexibly is number one. Number two is, can I kind of work when I want? And I think we're not quite there yet in terms of our brains getting that concept. You know, can you work at 2 a.m. if that suits you? You know, my husband's a web designer. He's creative. He can't time himself being creative 9 till 5. He might get an idea at 8:30 at night and then he sort of goes with it, and he's freelance, so he can do that. But if he was employed, yeah, his working day would technically have finished. So I think phase 2 is this, you know, can we just work when we like, as long as we are productive and we're generating the work that's required. So yeah, for me, absolutely, it's a huge part. And I think if you're talking about it as part of your recruitment process and being open about what you do, it's a massive opportunity for you to be an employer of choice, because I do think the pandemic's made everybody think about what they want from life and work and what they don't want from life and work. I know I don't want to be commuting as much as I was. So if you're it's part of your recruitment process that you sit and say, here's our approach, whether that's on an advert or whether that's in a bit of supporting information or whether you do it at interview. If you're talking about it, then you can satisfy those generational requirements that you mentioned there. And I think, you know, being alive to that is really important. So I think this is the last study I've got. So this was one that popped up again last week and I thought was just really interesting. Real impact of working from home. So it touches on the flexible working thing a bit. But interestingly, 80%, I don't know if you can see that stat because I've got you loitering over, I'll move you over there. 80% of employees feel that working from home has had a negative impact. And that obviously has lots of different ways. And we have to bear in mind the pandemic wasn't what I'd consider like normal working from home, because a lot of people had other halves, dogs, children, homeschooling, a million things to juggle. That is not what I'd consider normal working from home. So that may have contributed to this sort of negative impact because they're trying to balance it with all these other things as well. Plus, you know, not being able to go out and do things is obviously stressful. But 80% also said they are as or more productive and as or more motivated when working from home. And Sarah and I were just talking before we came on about, you know, when you used to say you're working from home and everyone used to go, oh yeah, you know, working from home in inverted commas. And I used to think, no, I really am working from home. But there was this kind of stigma about, oh, you know, you're having the afternoon off, aren't you? Whereas now I think everybody's been in this position, most people can understand actually it's an opportunity to kind of get things done. And that's definitely how I see it. It's kind of protected time almost to get things done and not be interrupted, or, you know, can I just have 5 minutes, which is never 5 minutes. So, you know, it's not for everybody, I think, is the message, but for the vast majority of people, there are some benefits. 2 in 5, a bit like the top stat, said that lockdown and working from home have negatively impacted their mental health. So mental health is definitely something, again, as part of that's kind of where well-being started, I think, was with mental health particularly, and it's expanded into all these other areas. So if you're going to start somewhere, mental health might, you know, if that's a particular issue for your business, or you feel that you really want to support people with that, if you're passionate about it, it's a good place to start, because there's a lot of information on the topic. There's a lot of providers out there who can, you know, help you and provide services around mental health. But 40% of people, and I'm doing quite a lot of work with my clients on this, feel disconnected to their business and culture. You know, we can't get away from the fact that working from home is great, Zoom's very convenient, all of those things are fantastic. But I watched a Simon Sinek video on LinkedIn this morning. You know, trying to create a culture when your people are remote is a challenge, and onboarding people, you know, new people to your business, getting them embedded in your culture when you haven't met them and they're just not even in your physical space. You know, you forget how being in an office kind of embeds you in a culture, because you've got, you know, values on the wall, and just, I don't know, there's branding everywhere, there's small things about it that embed you in someone's culture. So I think it is a challenge, and I'm certainly working with quite a few of my clients on reviewing their onboarding process and making it better. And some of that is just practically, how do we not overwhelm people? And some of that is, how do we do the softer stuff? How do we make sure they meet all the relevant people? How do we make sure that they feel connected to what we're doing? And a theme for me is then going forward, how do we make sure that we kind of get people together periodically or regularly to create and foster this sense of team? And again, it sort of touches on that flexible working subject that I could talk about on another webinar, but for sure, I think there's work to do there. And I think reviewing what you've been doing is definitely a relevant thing, because it doesn't necessarily work when we're all remote. And if we're going to end up in some kind of hybrid environment, my suspicion is that's where we're going. You're probably going to have workplaces where, you know, not everyone's in every day. So it's very likely that this theme of disconnection would be relevant. And then 60% of people said that their employers didn't do anything to keep people connected while working remotely. And I said earlier, I mean, from my experience and my clients, I find that not hard to believe, but it seems like quite a high statistic. You know, I found that a lot of my clients were almost saying the opposite. You know, we're really worried about people. What can we do? You know, Zoom's okay. I had a lot of interest in Christmas parties. People wanted to do a Christmas party, even if it was on Zoom and a bit clunky. They wanted to do something. So I guess that's, you know, just highlighting that there seemed to be, I don't know who was surveyed here, but there seemed to be people that were saying their employers. So if you are one of those employers who isn't doing much to keep people connected, do, because I think it is part of a retention strategy. And I think when we come out of this, when we're sat in the pub with our friends, you know, we're all going to be talking about, how did you find lockdown? How was your employer? What did they do for you? Just like people used to, you know, you're going to compare your employer, but on different metrics in future. And I think it will be things like this, you know, how caring was your employer? What did they do for you? How was your experience of lockdown? So just a quick stat here. So how many workdays were lost in 2019 due to mental health issues? So this is just pre-pandemic. I haven't got updated stats for this. And then what was the cost? So, let me scoot that on. So 70 million workdays were lost in 2019 to mental health issues, which is quite staggering. I'm assuming this was globally. And what was the cost? 2.4 billion. So we saw earlier that one of the benefits to having an employee wellbeing strategy in place was that sickness absence dropped, and a proportion of that could be around mental health. So again, just in terms of understanding the commercial benefits here, you know, having something in place, you could actually avoid quite, sickness is a massive cost for businesses. It's probably one of, apart from your salary bill, it's probably the next most expensive thing that costs you money and time, is people not being available for work. So supporting people with their mental health, could potentially reduce any sickness absence that people might have related to that. But I was quite surprised at that statistic. I know it's high, but I didn't think it was that high. And I'd be interested to see, obviously tricky to measure during the pandemic because of furlough. But coming out of it, I think mental health is definitely something that is going to, I don't know if we've felt the full benefit of the mental health crisis, as people are calling it, yet. I do think it will have had an impact, and when people come back to the office, I think we'll all almost start to discover it and explore it when people are coming back, because we've all been affected in different ways, as we know. So saving on well-being is a false economy. So, increasing happiness at work has been shown to increase productivity by 12 to 14%. So really, that last section in bold, this is the CEO of Investors in People saying that really supporting the well-being of employees, it says for SMEs, but I'd say for every business, is literally the key to financial success. If you're investing in this stuff, you will get some kind of output at the end, and it will benefit your business. So it's the right thing to do, but it's actually a sensible commercial thing to do as well. So it's clear from all of that we need to be doing much more. And as I said in the blurb for the webinar, a fruit bowl and the odd yoga session probably isn't going to cut it. So what do we do? So let's move into the nitty gritty now. So what are the benefits? So just really summarising a lot of things we've talked about. Number one, you're going out there openly, a bit like those big companies, and saying, we are committed to your well-being, to the well-being of our people, whether that's publicly or internally in your culture, you're saying it outwardly. If you do a well-being strategy well, it's highly likely that it's going to be linked to employee engagement. Your people are going to feel more engaged in your business, more likely to stay in your business, because they feel valued and cared for, a bit like we were talking about the generational issues. We've seen it has a positive impact on motivation and retention of your people, and also productivity and performance, because people feel supported. They're probably likely to give you more back as well. You're going to reduce the cost and time associated with sickness absence. And it gives you the opportunity to focus on areas where you want to see the biggest improvement. So if in your culture, sickness absence is an issue, actually you can start to dig into that a little bit and understand that, and then you could do some focused employee wellbeing work around sickness absence for a start. So you can make those choices about kind of what's the problem for us, and what do we want to target here, or just what are the things that we want to do more of to care for our people. So it's really about your business and kind of what you see as the most valuable things. And we touched on it earlier, but this is where I was going to mention the employer of choice piece. So really, the businesses that are doing this, and for me now is the perfect time, I'm saying to my clients, to get your house in order on well-being and your flexible hybrid working approach. If you get your house in order now, and you're at least considering your approach and starting to pull that together, as we start to move to a position where we come back to the office and you're potentially expanding, recruiting people, bringing your teams back together, you can massively help yourself as an employer of choice here, because you've got your approach sorted, and you can be like those big companies that we talked about earlier. Here's what we do. It's not even a question. Here's what we do. Someone hasn't got to wait till they come to an interview and say, do you do anything on well-being? And you say, well, we get some fruit in now and then. Actually you're saying, this is what we do. We really care for our people. It's a program of activity across the year. Here's why we do what we do, and it's constantly evolving as well. So it gives you this real opportunity as a bit of a sales tactic. And people, let's be honest, coming out of the pandemic, because people have had a chance to think about what they do and don't want, I think they're going to be looking for employers that do this stuff, that are good on well-being and have flexibility. They are going to be the two things that are important in people choosing a role. So if you're there and you've got your approach sorted, you're ahead of the pack, all of your marketing collateral sorted, your managers and leaders role model it by example, and you can kind of sell that to prospective candidates, which is just, I think people are going to be expecting most companies to have something on this. So if you haven't, it's not going to be great. So what exactly is a wellbeing strategy? Now, I know when I worked in corporate, when people used to talk about strategy, I'd be thinking, what is it? It's a word we use all the time, and we say we want to be really strategic about it. And from my perspective, this is how I define it. So I see it a bit like a picture frame. Okay, so you've got a frame around the edge, which is your framework for the practical activity you'll take. So it's your kind of overarching approach, a bit like we've been saying. What's your general approach to well-being? How do you want to be seen? Where do you want to end up? And then in the middle, the painting is all of the lovely activity that you're going to do. So that paints an overall picture. So that you've got this picture frame of the summary, and then inside is all of the detail that kind of evolves over time. In a nutshell, that is strategy. It is just saying, and what I say to people is, you don't often hear people just talking about strategy on its own. There's usually a plan associated with the strategy, because the strategy is the thinking around it, and the plan is the practical activity. So people often then say, we've got a strategic plan for that. So it's just about this, what's our overarching aim, and then what are we going to do? So the nice thing about strategy is you're kind of stepping back before you merrily start doing things. You're stepping back and saying, okay, what's our general approach going to be to this? And where do we start? You're not just going in and getting fruit and yoga people in and randomly doing things. You're actually thinking about it as an overall approach. And that's the value of having a strategy, is it's thought through, and it makes sense, and it's joined up, and it's, everything that you do is then done for a reason and links back to why you're doing it in the first place. So I've just put some starting questions here. If you've never written a strategy, I don't want to insult anybody if you have, I'm probably teaching you to suck eggs, but if you haven't ever written one, these are useful questions. Where are you now, and where would you like to end up? That's always a great place to start with strategy. And you might want to do some kind of SWOT analysis. What do you do really well? What's great about your culture? Kind of what's, if you identify, I don't know, mental health, sickness, absence is a particular issue for you, that could go in your threats or opportunities box, and that then might be something that you want to start targeting. So you can see here, you're just trying to get an overall picture of, how does the land lie right now, and where do I want to be? Are there companies that you aspire to, that you know of, who do employee wellbeing really well? Or do you know of other people's cultures where you think, oh, that's actually great, I'd love to implement that, but is that right for our business? You need to think about the kind of wellbeing culture that you want. I do think you need, I ask, how good are your leaders and managers? It does require a bit of role modeling and leading by example. If the people leading your teams are not into this, it's probably not going to be implemented very well or fully, because some teams will end up getting a great wellbeing experience, and some teams, if the leader's not into it, they just won't talk about it much. So I ask that question because I think it's interesting to discuss it as a management team and say, what does everyone think about wellbeing? Some people see it as a very kind of airy-fairy, it doesn't mean anything. But some people have obviously come from other environments where they've probably had good wellbeing programs. So just test that and temperature gauge that. Where are your leaders and managers in relation to it? And then, what do you want your people, your current people and your prospective candidates to feel about wellbeing, either when they work for you or when they're applying for a job? So a bit like we talked about earlier, what do you want to be saying about this in terms of being out there and talking about it? How do you want people to feel about you, and I guess talk about you, in the pub? What do you want them to be saying about you as a company? Oh, X company does is really good. We get all of this stuff, and it's, we're involved in it, and it's an ongoing program. Or, well, we had a yoga class a few years ago, and there's the odd bit of fruit kicking around. And what do you want them to be talking about you and saying about you? In terms of devising and structuring your strategy, so as I said on the last slide, it's an overview of your current business situation. So I would always start there. Where are you now? That's almost your opening section in your strategy. This is really kind of writing the document. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but do a bit of a, this is where we are now, and almost this is why we want to do a bit more on it if you do. What's going well, a bit, so from your SWOT analysis, what's going well if you've done things and they've worked and been really successful, and what's improved. So have you seen, if you've done something and you've seen a reduction in sickness absence, or I don't know, an increase in morale or whatever it is? Have you got anything tangible that you can talk about there? And also talk about your risk areas. So like we said earlier, you know, what does your SWOT analysis throw up, and where might you want to focus a bit more attention? And don't forget your strategy. You can do 5-year strategies, but what you can do is kind of 6 or 12-month strategies and focus on different areas each time. You don't have to almost do everything all at once. So you can list them all out, and then you can talk about what you're going to focus on. Oh, there's a bit of drilling there. The headings, the most common headings tend to be these, but this is an ever-evolving field. So mental and physical well-being, financial well-being. I've heard people talking about spiritual well-being, which kind of comes under the mental and physical, but it's almost separating out of it now. I suspect this language is just going to evolve as we go through, but generally the mental, physical and financial are the ones that I'm used to hearing about, talking about, seeing. So you can kind of categorize things, and that's what I've done at the end for you in terms of the activity. So you'll see what I think fit under those headings, but it's not an exhaustive list. And think about the future. So how are you going to develop this strategy? Again, as I said at the start, this is not a, we've done well-being, tickets finished. This is a, we've done well-being for now. What are we going to do? Because this is you making a start on it. How is it going to develop? You know, what do your people want? Where do you want to be? And how are you going to measure that success as you go forward? And in reality, any strategy, well-being or not, will differ for every business. So try, by all means, look at other companies' employee wellbeing strategies, but try not to copy what other people are doing, because that isn't writing a strategy. That is just taking someone else's and implementing it, unless it really works for you. But have a look at them, but I would always personalize it to your business and your culture. So your plan of attack, as I've called it, number one, commit to doing it. So this isn't playing around with the odd fruit bowl here and there. This is actually doing something holistic for your business, having an actual proper strategy and plan. As I said, personalize it to your business and your people. I think that is so key in terms of success. Analyze the underlying issues. So if as part of, when you investigate what people value, actually you might get some other issues coming out that aren't technically well-being. We're all overworked and we're overwhelmed. Okay, well, we might need to just look at those issues before we start trying to tackle them under a well-being heading. If it's, I don't know, line management capability, well, we might take that off and do something separate about that before, maybe as well in parallel as the wellbeing activity, but maybe we do that first and measure it. And again, make it evidence-based, review it, make sure you're keeping an eye on how it's doing. Hints and tips, it does take time. So again, don't try and do everything all at once. I think the temptation is to go, let's do all this activity and there's loads going on. I think people get a bit overwhelmed with what to get involved with and what not to. So I would start to do something. And as I've said, it can evolve over time and it can develop. So don't kind of whack it all in place straight away and then go, that's it done. It's got to be more than a tick box exercise, and it does start at the top. I'm not a fan of the top down stuff, but I think if leaders of your business aren't aligned with this and aren't talking about it and promoting it, I don't think it's going to be successful. So it does need the language to start there, and almost the role modeling to start there. You do need to understand what your values are on wellbeing. So how do you feel about it? Are you bothered? Is it a problem? Are you passionate about it? Is mental health really important to you for some reason? How are you going to demonstrate those values to your people and to prospective employees? Do invest some time thinking about the future. So think about how you want this to evolve. So you'll start somewhere, but actually, where do we want to end up in 12 months, 5 years, whatever that looks like? Train your line managers to be proactive. And I think this goes for most things, but particularly for wellbeing. I think if they can help you spot people who are struggling with wellbeing, I think that can be really valuable. So I'd always take some time to give them support actually to understand their role in wellbeing. Involve your people. So one of the first things I would be doing is surveying your people and asking them either what they've had in other organisations or what they would really value in terms of wellbeing. That's a great place to start, because then you can start pulling out, and people come up with great ideas sometimes, right? So why wouldn't you ask your people? So I would absolutely do that. As I said, don't do everything at once. Pick a few things, do those really well and get those embedded in your culture. And then you can either add more things on or swap them out for other things and introduce them back later, however it works best for you. And just spend time on it. This isn't something you're going to sit down and in 5 minutes go, there we are, that's my wellbeing strategy written. It's probably going to take a little bit of time. It might take a couple of management meeting sessions to bottom out some of that. What's our view on this? Where do we stand on it? And then, do you want to put together a working group, including some employees? I don't know how you approach it, but culturally, whatever works for you in terms of canvassing those views. Some people just do like a survey monkey survey. You can ask managers to ask their staff. You can just chat to people informally, or you can have these working groups that are almost involved in helping you put it together. And then these are the ideas. So this is my kind of last few slides now. So mental and physical well-being I kind of put together because there's a bit of overlap. I struggle to put these on a separate slide, but there's loads of stuff in here. Obviously, the mental health support, kind of mindfulness stuff, the physical fitness sessions. I think we've got Will from PostureWorks on today. In my corporate life, PostureWorks came in and did physio massage sessions. We had those subsidised. And they were really popular. So they used to come in once a month and have however many slots that people could have a physio massage, and people loved them. And posture awareness sessions. So in that wellbeing week, they did some posture awareness sessions for people, either desk posture or we had factory staff as well. So, manual handling posture stuff as well. I've put the fruit provision on here because let's not forget it. It is a nice thing to have. It's just that that's not the only thing you should have. And then there's a whole sort of dietary, nutrition-y. We've done nutrition sessions with people before. An employee assistance program, if you don't have one, can be really helpful because they can often help with the mental health side in terms of counselling. But some EAPs offer, they can help you with financial issues or help you find a builder or whatever. Some EAPs really are all encompassing. So if that's something that could be helpful for your business as a starting point, sometimes just getting an EAP implemented is a good one to do for a start because that it hits quite a lot of things. You can publicize self-care ideas. So if you're really into this and you're reading, a bit like I am with all those articles, if you're there and you're finding, why not share it? If you have a newsletter or I don't know, you do some sort of regular communication to people, why not just share ideas? Because I think everybody picks up different things, everybody values different things. So if you're sharing that, again, it just shows that you're thinking about it constantly and you care. There are companies who can do subsidised counselling sessions. I did meet a lady, I don't know if she's on today, I met a lady a few weeks ago who they offer that. They are a charity who offer that. And an emerging theme in the last few years has been around menopause education, which is an uncomfortable topic, but I'm certainly seeing that as something that is climbing up the agenda because it does affect women at work and they can often struggle to be productive and work effectively. So having some education for all staff on that and helping them understand how people might be affected and that it might mean sickness absence or time off or flexibility might help those people is definitely a good one. Financial wellbeing, which is absolutely my passion. I love financial wellbeing because I don't think we do enough in schools, and I do think the workplace it shouldn't be, but it's an excellent place to provide some of this. So general awareness sessions from independent financial advisors. At one of my last companies, we actually got the same person to do a session for our apprentices. It doesn't have to be for younger people, but almost at the start of your life, what are great things to think about? And they talked about pensions, but they also talked about like insurance. What is insurance? What does it do? I can remember, you never get told what insurance is for. You just get told you have to have it, and no one really understands what it protects you for. So they came and talked, a lot of them had cars. They were sort of 17, 18, getting their first car. So that was really beneficial for them, and they understood the value of doing additional contributions into their pension, and some of them then decided they'd put a little bit extra in, and just helping people to understand, obviously the younger you do these things, potentially the better it is for you later. Lots of stuff around pensions, because again, I don't think schools, I think it's changing, but I still don't think we're doing enough at an early stage for people. We did a matching pensions contribution thing at one of my last companies because our employee contribution was 0%, so employees didn't have to contribute anything, and we wanted to encourage them to put in. So we matched a contribution rate, and that meant that some of them at least put like 1% in. Again, you can share things that you read. And at one of my last companies, we had savings incentive schemes. So you put savings from your salary, go into a savings scheme, and at the end of a period, you get a bonus paid back to you. I don't know if these schemes still run. I'm going to assume they do. And miscellaneous. So I'm a dog person. I'm amazed my dogs haven't barked. They're down the other end of the house, but I'm amazed we haven't heard them. So there are companies that will bring dogs in. Obviously, at the moment it's virtual, but they in the normal world, they will bring dogs in, and you can essentially have like a dog play date, which it sounds like heaven to me, having all these puppies climbing all over you. Amazing. And when I went Domino, we actually used to have the guide dogs come in as part of their training once a year, and it was like the best day. They'd just come in to the HR office for about 20 minutes, and you just get to play with these little Labrador puppies, and they're so cute. So, you know, it comes down to well-being, because we loved it and we all really looked forward to it. And there is this link between dogs improving your health and all of those things. So, and whether you choose to let people take their dogs into work, that is another theme there as well. You can allow time to give people to give back to charity. I know that a lot of companies do that. I've put the flexible hybrid working stuff here because it comes into the other things as well, but it's more of a standalone thing in terms of thinking about it. And then let's not forget, let's have some fun. Let's do some social stuff. We're all missing seeing people. So let's not forget that, because I do think it's going to be even more important if we're working in a more remote world, hybrid world. I think remembering to bring people together, maybe just to have a social activity or some fun, and not always to have a work element to it, I think is going to be really important. And I put a few ideas there, but I mean, obviously you can do all sorts of things. These are things that I know people have done in lockdown on Zoom, by the way, but equally there are things that you could have, you know, magicians or comedians coming in to do a session, or you can do it on Zoom. But even if it's informal, you know, team events, everyone's been doing quizzes, you know, whatever it is that works for your culture, you know, make sure you're doing that, and make sure that you talk to your people about, in whatever the new normal is, they're going to value, you know, do they want more of it, less of it? Do they hate it? You know, what do they want? I'm assuming a lot of people are just going to want to get together actually for a start, and then kind of see where they go from there. And of course, if you don't have it, if you're not an HR person and you don't have an HR person, and all of this is something that you'd like me to come and help you with, then I can absolutely do that on a couple of different ways. So I'll put my contact details up at the end. But if you want to have a chat about it and how I could work with you to kind of get this implemented in your business, or at least get you started, I'm more than happy to do that. And that is it. Lovely. Hopefully you're all still awake.
That was great. Yes, thanks Pip. That was a really good overview of something probably is in people's minds, but it just brings it to the forefront of and how to really attack it in a tangible way. So really helpful advice there. We've had a few insights as well as we've gone through, which has been really helpful. So just a note to everyone, I know there's been a couple of links to things, so I'll share the chat afterwards so we can all catch up on that, which is really good. So thank you for popping those in. Yeah. Sarah mentioned a little bit ago, just pointing out how important understanding motivation is, and how that goes intrinsically with this stuff. So understanding your own motivation, your employees' motivation, and getting that understanding as the baseline could really help with putting some plans in action, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's almost why I said at the end, you know, involve your people in this, ask them what they want, and ask them what they value, because I think that then links to their sort of motivation levels to getting, you know, if you're going to implement activity, you want people to get involved in it. So if you ask people what they want and you do what they want, they're probably going to be more likely to actually buy in and get involved in it. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of the underlining thing I take away from this is just the plan should be perhaps just starting the conversations and keeping the conversations going in all the different areas, and making sure it's a free space for people to talk and be heard and have their say, and everything can be run through the teams. Probably goes with everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think communication is often, for me, if you do one thing, you know, open a dialogue with people about it, because I think it just shows silence leaves room for interpretation, right? So if you talk about it, people know that it's something that you're thinking about, even if you're not doing anything yet. People know it's on the agenda, and they think, oh, okay, my employer is doing something on that. If you do nothing and you don't say anything, people are going to be thinking, well, that company over there is going out there and saying, oh, look, I'm doing all this stuff, I might want to work over there. So I think it's all part of this engagement thing. You just have to be talking about it at least.
Exactly. So Claire has asked a question which Lena has helpfully put a link in, but we'll ask it as well in case there's any extra points we can make. So she said that they have limited budget for extracurricular activities. So she's worried that employees may have high expectations of what's going to happen over the next year. So it's kind of that low budget stuff. You've mentioned a few good things on your tips there. So I would say ensuring they have time to help the charities and things. You obviously don't need too much of a budget for that, although it takes out of time, but that's one thing you can consider. But getting around the high expectations, do you have any points on that?
Well, expectation setting is about communication. Okay, so I think it's about being out there and saying, we'd love to do a million things, and those slides at the end show you can do loads of stuff. I don't think you have to do loads of stuff. I think if you're starting this, it's about understanding what's feasible for you from a budgetary perspective and talking to your people about that. We haven't got a massive budget for this. We'd like to do some wellbeing activity. Have you got any ideas of stuff that is lower cost? I know there's an organisation, and I can't remember what they're called, but you can register for them and get like products that do trial. If they're doing a new product, I think like Cadbury's, if they're trialing a new chocolate bar, you can get a little like trial size, and you can get free trial sample sizes of things for all of your staff. So at Inca, we did that, and just every few months we'd get a load of trial products, and we'd just leave them out in the canteen and people could just grab them. And actually people loved that because they were like, oh, this is like a little extra thing, and it cost us nothing. It's free to register. So it's just partly it's talking to people, but partly it's being a bit inventive yourself about you don't always have to spend hundreds of pounds on things for it to be valuable. And also, if you speak to providers, they might be willing to do something on a subsidised basis, or they might be willing to do you a free taster session of something and then potentially discuss some follow-up sessions in future. I think because wellbeing is such an important topic, a lot of people might offer, a half hour, 20-minute taster session of something, and that might just be enough to spark a bit of interest and engagement from your people. So don't feel like you've got to come up with all the solutions yourself and spend thousands of pounds on stuff, because a lot of it is just about doing something, and it can be something quite simple. I think those guide dog visits, that's free. You just have to talk to the Guide Dog Association. So it's just about making the connections and talking to businesses about what they're willing to do, I think.
Exactly, yeah. And we've had a couple of other ideas. People have been doing escape rooms on Zoom. Anita said they had a treasure hunt on Zoom, which sounds fun. So yeah, there's all sorts of things now, isn't there, where you can get really creative, can't you? And
I'm assuming the treasure hunt was probably zero cost, apart from someone's time in. There's always someone in the team that loves doing stuff like that, writing quizzes. There's always one, isn't there? So find that person and use them. They're your low cost option. But yeah, I think it's just about. Sorry, it's my home phone going now. Got it all happening here today. It's just about. I think it is about being slightly inventive. Don't feel like you just have to go out and spend a load of stuff. If you can understand what your people value, actually, from one of my clients, a lot of it was about the social contacts, and they just wanted to do more quizzes and bring people together more often as a team on Zoom. And when the restrictions lifted and we could get together outside, they all arranged to meet like in a park, and they did a quiz socially distanced in a park just because they wanted to see each other, and that was pretty much zero cost. They just sorted it out themselves. Someone wrote a quiz, they took a picnic, done, and they were really happy with that. So it doesn't have to cost the earth, I guess, is the message.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've had some more, so no more questions yet. So if you have any questions, do feel free to ask while we've got the time here, but just loads more tips coming in. So Heather's mentioned that banks offer free financial wellbeing events, for example, HSBC. So checking out those could be good.
And lots of financial advisors also will come and do free pensions education sessions. That's certainly the ones that I've met on my travels from certain companies. They'll come and do a free kind of taster session with a view of potentially you might want to get them back and do some regular, financial advisory sessions with them.
Good idea. And Steph's mentioned that sometimes if you have benefits in place like life assurance, income protection, that actually they may come with EAP already.
Yes.
So checking out those and what you've got in place already is
Yeah.
another good idea.
Yeah, in bigger companies that I work for, it was certainly linked to like the life assurance or the private medical. Sometimes they chucked in an EAP, but if you're smaller and you don't have those benefits, you can just purchase an employee assistance program as a standalone thing as well. And like I said, it can be a great place to start because it does offer, it's not just counselling, a lot of the time it can be financial advice as well. So you're sort of hitting two things at once just by doing one thing. So that could be quite good.
Yeah. Had a question come through. So how do you ensure inclusivity when no matter how great the culture, you do have a few people who are just not interested in joining in with your ideas?
Well, I suppose
Question.
my first question is, why do you need everybody to get involved anyway? Wellbeing is this isn't a mandatory program of activity that we're enforcing on people. What we're saying is this is part of our culture. These activities are open to you if you'd like to take advantage of them. You don't have to. I know for me, okay, I'm not a particularly spiritual person. The mindfulness thing, it's not really for me. And that's, no shade on anyone. That's just not really for me. So it's not something that I would really engage in. But if you put on a financial advice session, I'd find that really interesting because I'm quite a practical person. So for me, it's about, that's why I'm kind of saying don't just do one thing or talk to your people, because you're going to get a range of responses here. And you might get some people who just aren't interested. And actually, it's okay. But the nice thing is you've got the stuff available and you're talking about the fact it's available. So if something happened to them and they had a financial issue or a relationship breakup or they needed support, then they know the employee wellbeing program is there. And that's where your communication and sort of promotion of it is important. A lot of these things aren't going to be everybody rushing to take you up on them. It might be they just get involved once a year. I know with the physio massages that Will did, some people literally had a massage every month. Some people came once every 6 months and some people just had one and never came again. That's fine. No, you don't have to do it. And there's limited slots available. So it's just about knowing it's there as a provision if you want to make use of it. And I think the benefit is about talking to it and saying it's there if you need it. I don't know if whoever asked the question wants to sort of embellish it, but unless there's a reason for wanting everybody to engage in a particular activity, and then you could probably approach that slightly separately. If there's a good reason that you need people to go on a pensions education session or something, then you could do that, but then it feels a bit more like work and not the sort of caring approach that we're trying to get to with these programs.
Yeah, I suppose there could be a worry if somebody's really unresponsive to these things that their silence could cause some concern. But then that's where it comes down to the communication and letting them know that things are available should they need it, and that's the main idea, isn't it?
Well, and with anything, if someone's not engaging, I'd always start with asking them why. It's not illegal to have a conversation with someone and just say, this is available. Is there a reason that you're not engaging with it? Is it just that it's kind of not for you? That's absolutely fine. We're allowed to ask people that question. And as I say, some people just don't need any support. They're fine. Or maybe they're getting it from their partner's company, or maybe they've already got a financial advisor or a pensions advisor, or maybe they already have yoga privately and they're happy with their yoga teacher. A million things. We're not saying you must only use our provider and you must use them. We're just saying it's here if you want to make use of it. And I think that's the best approach, that flexible approach of, we're putting this on. We don't necessarily expect everybody to get involved with absolutely every single thing we do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So, we have another question. We've had someone say thank you for the great session so far. So that's nice. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. So nice to see so many people.
Heather's said, how often would you advise reviewing your strategy? What you said about not ticking it as done is so crucial as it's an evolving process. But have you got any kind of ideas or time frames?
my stock HR answer to every question I got is it depends. So it kind of depends. It depends on the length of strategy that you're laying out for a start. So if it's a 6-month strategy, you could say, well, actually, we're going to let that run and we'll review it sort of 5 months, just before it ends, and then maybe plan for the next 6 months. Normally, I guess we're looking at a year. Let's say our average is doing a year's thing. I would probably look to review it every 6 months-ish. Just in terms of measuring the success of your activities, I think you need 3 to 6 months to get a trend of output. Some activities you're going to see a very quick turnaround on, some are going to be much more subtle. So it sort of depends what you're doing and how long you're writing your strategy for. But generally, if you're going for a yearly strategy, I'd probably say every 3-6 months, just a quick check-in, and then obviously, probably at the 9-12 month point, I'd be really deep diving into any stats that you can pull out if there are measurables, or even just a employee engagement survey around wellbeing to say, you tell us what you think is particularly working and what you're really enjoying, or what you hate and you're not really using. Or if you can see the stats from the providers about who's engaged with what. And you'll probably get a feel for it anyway. Like I keep mentioning the physio sessions, but that was a very visible thing because people would book in with us in HR. We could see how the sessions were always busy, so that just became a rolling thing that happened all the time then, because they were always popular, versus something that initially was very popular and then people faded away a bit. Well, actually, we might stop doing that for a period and bring it back later, or just do it once a year for a couple of months. So I think it's almost a continuous monitoring in the background, and then maybe a formal review maybe every 6 months, something like that. But there's I don't have a magic answer for you.
No right or wrong, but
no,
that's helpful. Lovely, thank you. That's all the questions we've had so far. With somebody else's, I think Heather mentioned Zoom karaoke, which could be
oh my god,
definitely interesting.
I think that would be chaos if someone was on delay. That'd be dreadful, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
I do a Zoom Zumba class, and my internet connection's always a little bit slow, so I'm like a line behind everybody. So I look like I haven't got the routine right because I'm never quite there. But the music for me is right at my end. But my teacher's always slightly ahead of me. But
anything that brings a smile is always worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's I think what Zoom has taught us is so much is possible. It's just we have to be open to doing it on Zoom, and certainly as restrictions lift, that's going to make life much easier. We can be, it's beautiful weather now, certainly here. We can be doing a lot more outside. We can be bringing limited numbers of people together in outdoor spaces. That's got to help. And I think the government are talking about trialing large scale events over the next couple of months to see what that does to transmission. So that might mean that as we come into summer, maybe some of that restriction around larger numbers of people getting together might be lifted. And we all have to be a bit of a fingers crossed on that, but it might mean we can start actually bringing whole teams together outside to just reconnect. I think is the first thing. and then almost talk about what we're going to do now.
Indeed. Heather's pointed out that Mental Health Awareness Week is 10th to 16th of May, which could be a good opportunity to launch some initiatives and ideas. As we said, it's not doing everything that week, but just launching your plans perhaps, or just a couple of things that could be
even if you just start talking about it. I think Will and the team came and did some, not a particularly sunny subject, but I think they came and did some like suicide awareness, because suicide in men much higher. We had a very male orientated workforce, and they came in and just did some like suicide awareness education sessions for us as well. So again, there's all sorts of things you can do. You don't have to be doing everything, but I mean there's weeks and days for absolutely everything, aren't there? And all the diets, that's why I put all the dietary like health. I mean there's like donut day. I mean that's not a very good health one to choose, but there's all sorts of like health weeks and days that you can promote, all of those things if you just look them up on Google. So absolutely.
Exactly. Thanks for your time, Pip. Really, really helpful. We'll send out your details and the details as well to recap on things. So thanks for all of your thanks that are coming in. Nice to see that too. Thank you.